Thank you so much. Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. I know it's kind of late, so thank you for your attention. As mentioned, I'm here on behalf of Alexan, but really also as an engineer and educator at heart. So my topic today is about partners in innovation, from research to real-world impact. Earlier this morning, I heard a very provocative question from ASEC NAP, Dr. Juanilo. He asked this question: how do we bring this wonderful work, ideas that we have, to the people who really need them? In other words, we can also think about how do we bring these ideas that we have and the work that has been completed and turn it into a national advantage. The answer is kind of obvious, right? We need the brilliant minds of scientists and engineers, and then combine it with innovative entrepreneurs. And we need that partnership so that we can bring it out to the real world. So that's the bridge, right? That's the partnership that we need. And so today I'd like to talk about that. We've heard enough stories about breakthroughs, innovative breakthroughs that sort of sit on the shelf for years because we couldn't find the right resources, the right market knowledge to do it at scale, at the speed that we want. And so it is that partnership that would enable us to do it. And so today I'd like to share with you a story, an example of how we were able to do this in partnership with DOST-ASTI and Alexan. Let's build that bridge. Earlier, we were mentioned that for those who are not familiar, just like a brief overview, Alexan actually was founded in 1972. So when we think about that, that's more than 30 years of history in the Philippines. And you can also say it's one of the pioneers of bringing in electronics technology and know-how to the Philippines. So it is with this deep humility and appreciation of the challenges that we've gone through over the decades that we bring not just the expertise in retail sourcing, because we mentioned that as students, as ECE students, we would go there and get components, but really about bringing it to the real world. So if we look at Alexan, it's not really just about sourcing components. We actually look into bringing that knowledge to the world. So we actually have very close to our heart is education and spreading the knowledge. We talk about knowledge transfer as something that's super important. And we're proud to say that we publish a local electronic magazine for students long back ago, and we hope to continue that work. And just last month, Alexan, as part of our education and CSR social impact arm, this is a picture of the students that we've trained from elementary and middle schools. And you could see this was in Hong Kong at the World Educational Robotics Contest. Grand sweep ang Philippines, gold, silver, bronze, hawak-hawak ang Philippine flag for our robotics contest. So very proud of that. We know we have the talent in doing that, but what do we need to do in order to bring it to the world and as the children grow and spread it further? So now I'd like to talk with you about and I'm not talking about just 1 year, 2 years, I'm talking about decades in terms of partnership of Alexan with the government and sharing with you that story. So here are some examples of products that were actually developed by Philippine government. So for example, we have on my right, the wood moisture meter, which was from FPRDI, the Forest Products Research and Development Institute. We also have examples like PICME, a microcontroller, DM705 multimeter. These are actually researched and developed by ASTI before, and also the grain moisture meter, which was done in partnership and also distributed, manufactured here in the Philippines in partnership with BIPRE, which is the Bureau of Post-Harvest Extension, currently now known as PhilMech, Philippine Center for Post-Harvest Development and Mechanization. So all these products are proudly Filipino designed and locally made. Thank you. Yes! Mabuhay ang Pilipinas! So with that, our example today, that story that I want to share with you, those are just like past examples. The one I wanted to share with you today is masid. Kaninang umaga pa, right? We hear this masid. And if you haven't gone, I'll do a plug. ASTI has a booth on the exhibit hall that shows and talks about masid. Take a look there. But basically, for those who are not quite familiar, masid stands for Meteorological Data Acquisition Stations for Information Dissemination, easily said as masid. So let's just go with masid. What's the story behind this? We all know that the Philippines, on average, we get 20 typhoons a year. The biggest one, I would say, that was like a huge impact for us was back in 2009 with Typhoon Ondoy. I think it's, lahat tayo, I think we're already here at that time and we experienced it. And we knew that in only 6 hours, the Philippines experienced like 1 month rainfall. And the amount of disaster, right, that ensued afterwards was just like huge. And so that actually propelled ASTI to think of ways like, how can we stop this natural calamities, like a natural occurrence turning into disaster? I just want to clarify, the word disaster is not always a given, right? If there's an earthquake or a volcano erupting in a remote place where no one actually gets affected, that does not constitute a disaster, right? A disaster is one wherein people's lives are affected. And so when we think about ways in which, how can we prevent these typhoons from becoming such big disasters, the answer comes into data, warning systems, and ways in which we can mitigate the risk. And so the idea came around developing the masid system. And a big part of that is, one, we need to have the data. And what kind of data do we need? We need rainfall data, right? We need wind data. We would need water level data, right? If the flood's coming, we need to know when that's coming. And so if we can do trend analysis, or even just saying predictive analysis, then we can actually have ways in which we can warn that this is going to happen. And this is where the idea comes from. So very proud to say that this ARQ, which we've also heard earlier, is already in its second version. It's not just ARQ, it's ARQ 2.0, the Advanced Remote Data Acquisition Unit. And this is basically the brain of masid. What it does is it can collect data from different kinds of sensors, right? So it's actually what we call, I would say, like a very open system, because we can configure the microcontroller to detect and receive data from different sensors. And then through GSM, satellite, LoRa systems, we could actually collate them and then send it to a data repository, which earlier I think we said is like core or coare, all right? Which would then be collated, and that's where we do the analysis. But what's beautiful about this is that we all know, where will this ARQ sit, right? It sits out in the wild, like meaning it's out there experiencing nature's forces, the rain, the wind, sometimes ocean water, very salty, right? So we need to make sure it's very durable. But even though, you know, we build it as durable as we want, sometimes things do happen. And this is where the local partnership and local expertise comes in. We could have like just imported something like this. Maybe we could have bought something. Maybe it's not specific to our needs, but it may have been cheaper. But what the beauty about having a local partner is that we're able to go there. And actually, we've done this a number of times. We've installed something, and we have to go back there because something breaks, right? This is the reality of life. But we know this going in. In terms of the sensors, we've also worked on building the automated rain gauge station. So this is the one that measures the rain amount when we talk about inundation, right? The duration of the rain, the intensity of the rain, right? For every 0.5 millimeter of rain, it will actually tick there. And same concept, it will use GSM or satellite system, and it will send the data. It will have solar panels so that we actually have rechargeable batteries in there so you can last for a long time without having somebody, you know, needing to go there and change the batteries. Like, it's really designed for our local environment. Another thing that we manufactured using ASTI's design is the water level and rain monitoring system. So this is like a tandem system. It would have an ultrasonic radar sensor. This is, you can see number 1 over there. So it's basically an ultrasonic sensor which will then measure how high the water level is. And then once it gets there, it actually then goes to the ARQ, the one that I mentioned earlier, which is the brain of the system, which then collects the data and sends it to Coare. Right, so that's why we need the satellite antenna. There's a solar panel also, and the pole mast. Now, just later I'll share a little story about the pole mast, so just take a look at that picture in a bit. Now, having that data is very helpful, right? But sometimes when we went to the DRRM, no, may nakausap kami, no, sabi nila, what's the point of having all this data, right? It's helpful for academicians, right? But what about the real people who are going to experiencing the floods, who are out there? What's really helpful for them is a warning system. It's letting them know, is it time, is it safe? Is it time to flee? And so this is where we combine it with what we call the FEWS system, which is FEWS, the Flood Early Warning System. And so that's where the control box is. It actually have a siren. We can customize the messages that would say, right, is it time to stay put? Is it time to evacuate? Or is it time to come back? Right, so all this is like customized. It's done in Tagalog or any languages that we want. So just sharing that these are some of the pictures. We've actually done this partnership for, I would say, almost 10 years now, right, building it out. And here are some of the examples. We've been to Nueva Ecija, Antique, Pangasinan. And moving forward, we also have like Pasig, Mountain Province, Kalinga, and then moving the following year, coming in. Basically, you could see it's all over the Philippines when we're doing this. Not only for the rain gauges, not only for those tandem systems, for the water level systems, but also for the FEWS systems, which is warning using the sirens that it's time to evacuate so that people can we can save lives that way. So when we're installing this, one thing that you might note is that there are different ways of installing it, right? You can see in here, you need like a very tall pole. Over here, it just sits on top of like a building. It's already built in. So one of the challenges, I think you could sort of guess, when you go there, sometimes you need a pole mast in there, especially for water levels. It needs to be deep into that lake or river or whatnot. And those are done in partnership with either the LGUs or the government officials that are over there. And so when we go into that, right, things are not always smooth going, but one thing we know is that we wouldn't have done more than 10 years of partnership if we can't deal with these challenges, right? So in terms of like, if we look at this map, this is the field sensor map. You can go to their website, and you could see that we have, this is the one where Doc Franz earlier mentioned, more than 2,000 sensors deployed across the Philippines. So that it is in the scale, right? Once you have a lot of data points, that's when the data becomes more powerful. Same thing with machine learning, right? That's why we're able to come up with this like predictive analysis. And so this is the power of partnering with our government agencies and the private sector, right? When we look at it, this is what happens when we see and partner. We stop seeing research and commercialization as two separate worlds and start seeing them as two ends of the same runway. Now, Franz earlier mentioned, right, the tall order is not just in tech prowess, but in technical transfer. Bring it to the real world. And so if we are able to do that, we know that our nation will rise. Because the truth is, we know our nation's competitive edge is not going to come from just one single breakthrough. It will come from our ability to consistently transform those groundbreaking breakthroughs into real-world solutions. And so this requires a new way of thinking, a new way of working, and we need to create deliberate pathways for collaboration. And so with that, I'd like to just end with like a great thing in emphasizing that the next great breakthrough will not happen in isolation, right? We may come up with it in the lab, but we'll bring it through partnership with the private sector. At Alexan, we are not just having decades of experience with sourcing components, but also in manufacturing, as well as deploying these solutions at scale. And it would be an honor and a pleasure for us to continue partnering so that we can bring our country to better and higher heights. So So this is our commitment, right? As part of private industry, we need to build a renewed era of collaboration. If there is one word that I heard over and over again today, it is collaboration. Collaboration with the people who need it, collaboration with the LGUs, but also collaboration with the private sector. And we are ready. We will ensure that the incredible discoveries made by our nation's finest and brightest researchers don't just advance science. We're going to save lives, we're going to create jobs, and we're going to solve the most pressing challenges. And so we want to solidify our nation's place as a global leader in innovation and build a prosperous future where we can leave a legacy for generations to come. With that, thank you. Maraming salamat po.